Hello and welcome to the Fiddler AI Forward Summit on LLMs in the enterprise from theory to practice. There's no dearth of AI conferences nowadays, and we appreciate that you have carved out time to join us today. There's also no dearth of news on the AI front. From the president's executive order last week to OpenAI's Dev Day earlier this week, there's plenty to digest and plan for. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers, panelists, and workshops, and are excited for the learnings and discussions coming up. My name is Kirti Dewan, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Fiddler AI, and I will be your MC for the day on the main track. Once again, thank you for joining us, and Fiddler looks forward to shaping the future of AI together with you. Let's kick things off with opening remarks from Fiddler's founder and CEO, Krishna Gade. Krishna is going to share his observations about the current state of the AI landscape, as well as thoughts on what the future might hold. Krishna?
Thanks, Kirti. Hello, everyone. Very nice to see you again. We have been hosting this summit for the past 5 years, ever since Fiddler started, on various topics on explainable AI, model monitoring, responsible AI. And this time we are bringing you LLM ops, which has been a very hot topic in the industry, especially in the last few quarters. Pretty much every enterprise company that we have met with is thinking about building generative AI apps and how to go about what are the use cases and how to safely operationalize these LLMs. Hopefully this summit today, with all the sessions with great speakers, will give you an idea of how one can go about it in practice. So in my presentation today, I'd love to give you a brief overview of what I'm seeing on the market from a practitioner perspective as we talk to several different customers. What are the challenges people are trying to solve as they take LLMs to production? And I'm sure you'll learn a lot from the other speakers later today. So, it is very clear that we are in the midst of this big transformation with respect to AI, right? I have been in the tech industry for 20 years. I've gone through the .com revolution, the cloud revolution, the mobile transformation, and now we are in the midst of this big AI transformation, where pretty much every company is refactoring their software to be AI-based software. And there is boards and board level conversations, CEO level conversations happening here. The future of generative AI is really bright because what we are seeing is across industries, retail, banking, pharma, travel, people estimate economic benefits, hundreds of billions of dollars. There's an estimate of $4.4 trillion market being opened up with generative AI applications. And this is a huge, huge opportunity for all the enterprises, as well as startups like Fiddler, to help companies to build these LLM apps faster, reliably, and safely. When I talk to the CXOs, the CIOs, or the chief data officers, the heads of AIs of various different enterprise companies, that these four things keep coming up in their conversations. Number one is introducing automation and saving costs. Generative AI is basically seen as a vehicle to do that. If you are managing a large customer support team, you can make them more efficient by actually introducing, summarization applications, helping, create chatbots. However, there is also a huge, huge, concern around brand safety. Every CXO out there wants to make sure while they build these generative AI apps, they are safeguarding their brand reputation. And then there is a huge motivation to innovate with generative AI as well. There are several new applications people are thinking to build. Already, we are working with customers that take embeddings as an input from these generative AI models and use them in their traditional machine learning models, whether that is for search, ranking, or recommendations. So there's a lot of interesting innovations happening in this space. And then the final thing is embracing AI safety, right? At the C-level, people don't want to be putting their company's reputation at risk while they build these applications. Now, how does one go about deploying these applications in a safe manner, right? That's basically what we are concerned about at Fiddler. But when we actually speak to the practitioners, the AI engineers, the ML engineers, these are some of the problems that we sort of hear. How do I make sure my LLM is performing in a satisfactory way for my end users? How do I make sure that I have control on the quality of inputs and the outputs that it is actually producing? How do I make sure that the model's response is safe? It's not producing any toxic content. My team is spending millions of dollars on GPUs. How do I make sure that we are getting the best ROI from these LLM applications? Correctness is a big issue. LLMs are prone to hallucinations. How do I make sure that my responses are actually not, hallucinated or not made up? Transparency, how do I know why the model is actually making up that response? Whether the model is leaking private data, whether it is sensitive to small changes in inputs. These are all the problems that generative AI applications need to solve for them to be deployed in a safe manner. And I'll go a few of these problems into in a little bit more detail. When it comes to privacy, this is a big concern for enterprises, right? Because large language models are known to memorize elements of training data. This is one of the researchers on how, if you take a bunch of Netflix movie titles and train a large language model, you can actually do a prompt engineering attack where you could extract out the title and the image by actually producing the name. So this is basically a huge problem for enterprises that how do you, when you actually use the third party APIs, OpenAIs, the Anthropics of the world, how do I make sure that my PII elements are addressed? Even if I'm using open source LLMs, if they're end user facing, how do I make sure I'm safe against prompt engineering attacks? Hallucinations is a huge problem. This is like an example that we cited in our previous conference as well, where when ChatGPT launched, one of the famous computer scientists in the Bay Area was pronounced dead. And when that person was trying to interrogate the ChatGPT, it was not able to produce enough evidence. So this is actually an ongoing problem with large language models, and how do you mitigate hallucinations is a big problem. Transparency is a huge issue. LLMs are becoming more and more complex. If you listen to what the Dev Day a couple of days ago, OpenAI has introduced several new features in optimizing for their retrieval augmented generation LLMs. It's no longer a simple text completion model anymore. There's so much going on behind the scenes. So how do you know, how sort of like the model is that I'm with driving the response? This is a huge problem. There are some innovations happening with chain of thought prompting to introduce transparency, but there again, they can be biased, they can be highly unreliable, depending on the context, explanations can change. So this is a huge problem for enterprises to solve for. Bias is a big problem, right? Because these large language models are learning from the content on the web. And as you know, the web is authored by the privileged class, people who can speak English, who are from developing nations, and it inherently has a lot of bias crept in. And so when you ask questions trained on these models, two Muslims walked into a contest, and you might get a response like Texas cartoon contest opened fire. And what is a family? Depending upon which society you live in, you may get a response that is not inclusive enough. So what can we do here, right? So we believe that AI observability can make a difference here. AI observability frameworks can help you deliver responsible enterprise models for both machine learning operations. We have seen that in the traditional ML world, now especially with LLM operations. And in a way, by embracing AI observabilities, companies can help make sure that their AI products are received better for their customers. They're producing fair and trustworthy outcomes. And in a way, we're all building a better society for the future. And that's what excites me personally to be working at Fiddler. And so I'll just take one example in terms of how AI observability helps, right? Let's take like retrieval augmented generation architecture. This is a canonical architecture that most companies are trying to productionize their LLM apps. They have a prompt database, a vector database of all of your documents. They have a large language model, maybe one or more, and they then use all of these three tools to create response building when they get questions from users. And when they get the response building, they run through some safety checks and then basically produce a response to the customer. Now here, several things can go wrong. Is response actually accurate? Is it actually coming from the documents that was extracted? Is it safe? Is it leaking PII data? All of those problems that we just discussed can happen here. So how can AI observability help here? So AI observability can help you evaluate your LLM safely in production. It can help you evaluate prompt injection attacks. It can help you visualize how your data is being encoded into embeddings, how they cluster together. It can help you do model-graded evaluation, have a third-party model evaluate your current LLM. Similarly, when you actually deploy to production, it can help you monitor safety issues, visualize patterns, help you understand model drift, and then help you sort of like, basically, monitor for correctness, safety issues, keep a human in the loop, when you see a drift, when you see a performance issue, and help you diagnose these things. And that's basically what, we are building at sort of Fiddler, right? So, just sort of shameless plug here is Fiddler is a pluggable AI observability solution. You can actually integrate it with a variety of modeling and data providers out there. I think in the subsequent sessions, our teams are going to show demos of our product. And so we are very excited about this session. Thank you for joining our summit, and hope you will learn more and enjoy all the talks and events that we have planned today. Thank you so much.